marketing service. On the podcast today, we have Angel Ribo. Welcome, Angel.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Thomas.
My pleasure. Would you like to tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm originally from Barcelona, although I live in Texas. I've been living here in the Dallas area for the last 10 years. And, in a nutshell, what I do is I help both corporate CEOs and established entrepreneurs to bridge the gap globally for expansion and exposure. I basically use internationalization as, strategies to help accelerate the growth of their businesses. That's what I do. And also I have a nonprofit. It's called Wisdom for Kids. And what we do is we help underprivileged kids in Latin America become entrepreneurs using their local resources. So those are basically the two main things I do in my life.
Well, on LinkedIn, we've actually had short conversations about that, haven't we?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn. Actually, LinkedIn is I would say the main platform where I conduct my business and my clients' businesses. And actually what I consider myself to be a LinkedIn influencer. Actually, I use my influence to help my clients get their messages and their products and services out to their markets. So yes, exactly.
Well, I know from the profile that you are the CEO Confidant, but just in terms of what you do, is it accurate to say that you're a coach, a CEO coach?
Well, that's a great question. So I started as a consultant, right? So basically, giving my 5 cents, my piece of advice to the CEOs of this world, exactly. But eventually, I became more of a coach, and not only a business coach, but also, as you said, a CEO coach, in the sense that when you start building trust with your clients, they eventually ask you or ask me, and hey, can you also help me with my position, specifically with the role I have in the company, with my life even. Because again, you cannot isolate the different roles that we all play in our lives, right? We're probably friends, we are sons, we're maybe parents, right? We have many different roles in our lives. It's difficult to isolate them, and as soon as this trust is being built with them, yes, to your point, additional ways of helping my clients and business partners arise.
So they might come to you for business help, and then also it might cross over into their personal life.
Yes, absolutely. It does very often. Exactly.
So what are the common traits of successful CEOs that you have observed?
Yeah. Number one, and actually that's one of my mantras in my business, which is, they take action immediately, right? And it doesn't have to be necessarily like perfect action. And that's something I use that's a nugget I use all the time, which is take imperfect action now. Take imperfect action now. And I use that also with my entrepreneurial, clients, customers. And that would be one. So they're less, let's say, I wouldn't say fearless, but they're less fearful of taking action and going to the market and making business decisions and marketing decisions, although they don't have all the information, all the variable, right? So they like to take risk. That would be the second one. They'd like to take risk because they know that taking risks, they can go to the market and they can actually, in the entrepreneurial world, there's this concept of the minimum viable product, right? So there's this minimum viable characteristics of a particular product or service that when you start offering it to the market, you get the first feedback, right? So they are very good at that. They're very good in start talking with their potential future clients and asking them, hey, I am planning to do this. I am planning to offer, this to the market. I'm planning to send this to offer this product or this particular service. What do you think about it? And they're very good in grasping this market intelligence very early on in the life cycle of that particular product or service. So again, taking imperfect action, being open to take risk. And the third one would be they're all very, very, very mindful that the key thing inside the organization, so that they are able to provide their boards with the answers that they're looking for, the shareholder value that they're looking for. They're very mindful that everything relies on their teams. Okay, it's not that everybody does a great job in educating or engaging or keeping their employees accountable. Obviously, every single CEO would like to have a high level of accountability within their employee base. But the reality is that that depends a lot on their leadership style, right?
Mm-hmm.
It depends a lot on the engagement of the employees. But they are definitely completely mindful that and conscious that their team is everything for them, and every single decision they make as far as growing their team or maybe downsizing it whenever the circumstances make them do that, they are very, very mindful that the talent and everything that they have been developing within their team is the main asset that the company has. So they put a lot of effort in making sure that their own messages, the messages that come from the board, really, really, really go down, not only onto their own leadership team in the company, but to the rest of the employees of the organizations. Those would be my three main traits that I have found throughout my life.
The first thing that you mentioned is also something I've heard about billionaires. So they basically looked at common traits among billionaires, and the way they phrased it, which is reminding me of what you said, was they're willing to take action regardless of the certainty of whether it will work or not. So you said it was risk, but I mean, it just makes me think of that because a lot of times we don't know whether something's going to work, but the billionaires or perhaps CEOs in your case, they're willing to take the action anyway.
Exactly. And actually this is also a common trait with not, I work a lot here in Dallas, in the Dallas Fort Worth area with entrepreneurs, with startups, and very, very embedded, let's say, in the startup world. And I work with business incubators, business accelerators. And something that I find in common all the time is that sometimes people say they really want to go to the market early, but they are fearful of going to the market. They are fearful of maybe talking to the market too early because they have this idea and they want to get, hold on to this idea, this concept, and they don't want anybody to know, blah, blah, blah. I would say, I always tell them the same thing. I tell them, I'm afraid that you're looking at the world from a scarcity mindset, right? Because, I mean, of course, there's this, super multi-billion dollar, ideas like, Uber or Airbnb or many others, right? I mean, I understand that. But regardless of that, I think that it's very important that very early on, you get these early wins, that they give you the confidence to keep moving, to keep, moving forward and doing things. And I like to think of organizations. I sometimes, I have my own like frame of reference in my life. I see the life in a very specific, peculiar way. And I think that both people and companies are just energy. That's how I look at the world. They're just energy. So, a company, a startup, it's just a whole, bunch of energy that is being built by one of many different people. But at the end of the day, you want this energy to get into the market, right? You want this energy to touch the market because it's going to be, benefiting the market. It's going to be, bringing additional value to the market in the form of service or product. It doesn't matter. And as Tony Robbins says very well, the amount of wealth that you are able to generate with your business or with your life is totally, proportional to the amount of people that you're able to add value to. So, why being, again, although I know that intellectual property is important, why not going very early on into the market? Just take your chances and start deploying this, start testing it. Proof testing is the number one thing I always advise both my CEOs when they want to launch a new product or the newly established ones when they are starting with a completely new venture. Just don't, those precautions, which I understand come from a mindset of scarcity, and not everybody is in agreement with me, but hey, there's enough business, there's enough needs out there in order to fulfill, as much as you would like to offer to them, literally. And if it's not locally, it's going to be in other areas. That's why I'm very strong on internationalization and going international, going global, because there are a lot of products and services that are not only valuable locally, but in many other areas in the world.
Well, yeah, so much so. And tell me if this was not what you were going for, but your phrase about the minimum viable product, so much so that it's actually got its own name now, right? So it's in they call it products being in beta. So, we're
Mm-hmm.
pushing this out and you're going to be the ones that are testing it, right? Is that kind of what you meant?
Yes, yes. It's the concept is exactly is very similar. In the entrepreneurial world, they use this term just because you know it's 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 the minimum viable as far as what? Viable as far as you are able to serve a need, right?
Mm.
So exactly, it's the earliest stages of a product or of a service, which is exactly the concept of a beta, right? So you are telling your clients, I'm launching this. I would like you, if you were so kind, to test it along with me, and you tell me the feedback. You tell me what you think about it, so we can move forward. Exactly. I think that you know the smartest companies do that. They actually reach out to you and they tell you, would you like to beta test
Mm.
our next product or service? I think it's extremely smart, and allows you to have this early on feedback from what will happen down the road.
So because you've worked with so many of them, what are the common mistakes that a lot of CEOs make?
If I had to mention only one, the most important one is definitely that they don't care enough about engagement. They don't educate their teams enough so that they don't feel engaged, and they don't engage, excuse me. And if they don't engage, you cannot keep them accountable. So,
So is that with staff engagement?
yes, exactly. That's definitely the one. And as the company grows, you know, one mistake that I see very often is that again, they stop being the leaders that they were in the beginning when the company started. So they little by little they kind of start building the ivory tower kind of thing, and they forget about they're not so involved and engaged with the rest of the team. I would say that's definitely the number one, um, let's say, mistake or challenge they have as soon as they start growing, making sure that they give their teams the right education, so that they really feel that, oh my god, I feel empowered. I really understand that we can do this. Because at the end of the day, we do not have to forget. I mean, you have your own business, Thomas, so we don't have to forget that, or we shouldn't forget that we exist because we put an equity, and we want a high return on that equity. We invested in our business. We invest with our time, which is the most valuable thing that we have in our lives, our time. We invest that time and that money, and we want a return. That's why companies exist, to provide the owners, the shareholders, to provide them with a return, right? That's why we exist. And sometimes we forget that, but what if every single employee was fully aware of the financial implications of their business decisions, right? So that's extremely important. And that actually, it's funny because, as you know, it wasn't the case in Europe, and it's not the case here in the US either. We are not educated, from kindergarten up to 12th grade or high school. We're senior high school. We're not educated on financial, acumen. We're not educated on financial literacy. So even if we have worked for large corporations and then we become entrepreneurs ourselves, we have never received the right level of financial literacy, which allows us to be fully mindful of the consequences of what we do.
It's
I mean,
kind of up to
obviously,
you, isn't it, if you want to learn about that stuff?
exactly. It's but it's funny because we are still, both of us were entrepreneurs, right? We still made the decision of going out to the market, offer our services, and risk it. We risk it every day.
Mm.
We risk it every day. We go out there, we have our marketing, we have our podcast and exposure and everything, but still we risk it every single day. So if you take this into larger organizations, the reality is that there's a common elephant in the room, and that goes up to C-level as well, to the CEOs, which is not everybody has received the right level of financial literacy. I mean, I was reading the other day a great book that speaks about very basic business concepts, and uh, only 46% of C-level of business operators really understand the basic financial principles of organizations. Only. So it means that there's this big elephant in the room. Excuse me, I just let me take that back. It's 46% of C-levels are able to understand the main financial principles of the organizations. So it's not that they don't understand it. It's just that they have not been trained to do it.
Mm.
They have not been educated to understand fully the financial implications of the business decisions that they make every single day. That's why that's definitely the number one challenge. It's the disengagement of the employees for a lack of, or due to a lack of education.
Well, coming back to your point of engagement, do you think that's a problem of incentives? So I think there's an issue with staff potentially speaking up where there's an element of risk there for them. Whereas if they don't speak up about let's say a problem or an issue, they're no worse off than they already are right there.
Yeah, you're talking about another of the challenges that companies have, which is managing expectations, right? All the time inside an organization, we are always managing expectations, or our bosses or our peers are managing expectations, and we don't talk about it. There's things that we don't talk about it. To what you just said, just explained, we don't talk about it, but we should talk about. We should be working on a company, in an organization that allows everybody to speak up about anything, anything. We should be able to speak about anything inside the corporation. One of them being incentives. Is incentives an important ingredient in the engagement equation? Absolutely, it is, but it's not the only one. And again, think about your career, right? Think about your career since you had your first job until you had your last job, or even if you have a job right now. Would you trade some of your paycheck for having a better job? Excuse me, a better boss, okay, or a better culture? Would you be willing to forfeit part of your check if you were going super excited every single day to your work, to the company that you're working with? And I would probably say yes, 99% of the time.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that that's the case.
Exactly. Because, when you are excited, you love it. I just love to go to that place and meet with that person and work together with that thing, because it's, again, and that's something also that Tony Robbins says very much, which is the quality of our lives is the quality of our emotions, right? And again, unfortunately, we trade in those emotions for money. So is money a good incentive? Yes. And there's people maybe that are more incentivized by money than others, but still, what about culture? What about culture? What about if you were given all the education, again, going back to education, what if you were given all the education that you need inside the company, that you feel really empowered? You feel really empowered and you feel that you thrive in that organization. Is that going to impact positively engagement? I do feel so. I do feel so. So that's why I believe a lot on, very much on money is important. And again, for me also, money is a matter, is a form of energy, right? Which is good, obviously. And we have to pay our bills, and we want to buy our houses, our boats, our airplanes, whatever that is. But still, it's the every single day emotion that we go through and experience, human experience with our feelings and emotions, that really counts. And, when you go back home at night, when you explain, how was your day, right? If there's someone at home asking you how your day was, even if it is your dog, right? Your wonderful dog that's looking with his beautiful eyes to you, that he's asking you, I miss you, I miss you, sir, I miss you. How was your day? And you start talking to your dog, I'm sorry to put this comparison here, this metaphor, but I really believe that emotions and feelings make a big difference when you go back home and you reflect about the day that you just had.
No, it's the way you want to spend your life, right? So I totally agree with you.
Yeah, exactly.
So have you got some success stories that you're proud of in helping CEOs?
Yeah, there's a lot of stories. I would probably like to explain or to tell the story about a small company, just because I think that there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there. There's a lot of people listening to this podcast, and obviously, I thank every one of them here right now listening to us, because I think that it's a story of consistent, imperfect action being taken and believing in one's products, services, and team. I remember a company that went from literally a few thousands of dollars and having also only 2 employees that I started to work with. I started to support, I started to coach, I started to help them go to the market. I started defining the different, functions of inside the company. And within 2 years and a half, they were already 43 employees, and they were really, really close to $1.5 million in revenue. I like to explain that story because the owners were very young.
Mm.
And I remember that I was reluctant to start working with them because they didn't have really that much of an experience. The most important experience that they had was in a very large corporation. It was actually an appliances company, both of them. They had different, engineering responsibilities, positions inside that company. But they didn't have management experience. Again, they didn't have management experience. But oh my God, their passion was over the top. You could tell these guys were going to do it. I still remember when they came to see me. I think we met at a restaurant or a coffee shop. I was inside. I saw them when they arrived in their car. They had this very small, tiny car. I mean, I remember that. I mean, image as if it was now. But they were with this big smile in their faces, and they really wanted to do that, and they really wanted to work with me. And oh my God, it was a blast. I mean, obviously we are friends today, and we respect each other a lot. But it was their passion. It was there's nothing impossible. We are going to do this, and we are going to do that much better than anybody else. It was this, I mean, they didn't care about competition. It doesn't matter if we are the newcomers. It doesn't matter. We are going to do this in a better way and the right way. And we're going to put a lot of innovation in what we do, and we see the world in a different way. And if I had to reflect and also say, besides their passion, what also made them successful, because they didn't have the experience as business owners, right?
Mm.
Is that they were really good in dealing with people. Their team members loved them. They were a couple. Their team members loved them. They had a very something that I liked a lot. Today we talk about a lot about uh, gender equity. They did a great job. I mean, their industry was high tech, so it's a man dominated industry, but they had a very well balanced. I work a lot in the diversity and inclusion space, and they did a great job bringing female workers and male workers all together for the good of the company. And very, very young, very, very excited employees still today. I mean, I haven't worked with them for the last 10 years now, and 5 years now, but they still remember me, and I will never forget. Every time I was going to visit them, the excitement, their team, the way that they were supporting each other and helping each other internally. That was really a great experience.
So they went from 2 to 43, did you say?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, for some reason, when I asked the question, I thought that it would be, taking a corporate to bigger numbers or something, but I can completely understand why it would be something, I don't know, more meaningful, a story that's more meaningful to you, taking something which is barely just started to what most people define as successful.
Yes, obviously it's important to help a company, for instance, to expand internationally, to build a distribution channel so they start generating millions of dollars within a couple of years, 3 years, and you have a big budget to spend to do that as well. But that's it. I mean, when a large corporation starts doing this, they already have all the checks and balances and everything in place. Obviously, it's a nice story, and we help a lot of people, but it's a completely different environment, right? It's a completely different experience as well.
Yeah.
Because obviously every single one of these 43 means 43 different families.
Yeah, it's more personal, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So have you noticed some trends or circumstances where a CEO would commonly reach out to you?
Yes. Yeah. Number one, I think that, and I'm going to talk about marketing now, right? I think it all depends on how you market yourself. And obviously, I mean, thank you for this opportunity today, because at the end of the day, every time that I expose myself, I'm reaching out to the world, and the world is listening to me, right? So what kind of CEOs, you ask me, what would make them reach out to me? I would say, what makes them be attracted to me? Okay, that's the question I'm going to answer.
It's the smile, isn't it?
Well, obviously, I mean, it's the attitude. It's the attitude. If you've read that book from this guy that was so many years in the concentration camps in Germany, Viktor Frankl, In Search of Meaning, if you've read that book, he would say that regardless of where you are in the world, even if you are for 5 years, 10 years in a concentration camp, it's your attitude which is going to keep you alive. So it's the same thing. So I think that number one, obviously, people reach out to me because they have something that they want to do, or they have something that they want to get rid of, and they are looking for help. So number one, they are humble enough to ask for help. That's the number one thing. Those CEOs know that they need help, and they think that they could help them, either because of my professional background, or either for the values that I put out there every single time I go out there with any of my marketing strategies, right? You probably have seen that. Exactly. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I post every single day. I make a mix of my clients' content, my content, very personal things. I actually talk very personal very often. Last year I talked a lot about building bridges and these kind of things, right?
I like the comedy.
Yeah, exactly. And I like to connect. Like at an emotional level, right? And at a very human level. So I stand for humility. I stand for probably acceptance. I stand for gratitude. I think that those three principles, at the end of the day, if you consistently get out to the world and expose yourself with a specific verbiage and attitude, eventually the world comes back to you because of that, because they value those principles, or they value that what you do every single day. There's this, you're a marketing expert, so that when someone starts talking about, okay, so I'm going to serve that community, and that's going to be my persona or my avatar, and very often we make a big mistake, which is we're trying to have this avatar so wide so we can attract everybody, and it's the other way around. It takes a while to entrepreneurs to understand this, that the more specific you are about how you position yourself and how you are yourself reaching out to the world, the higher the chances that you're attracting the CEOs or the business owners or the entrepreneurs or the startup, leaders that you want, that they need your services, that you want to attract to your practice.
If you're marketing to everyone, then you're marketing to no one. That's
exactly
the quote that I use for that one. So would you say that it's about they're looking to achieve something, and they're not 100% sure on what it is that they want to achieve, but they see you as the person who can help them get there, basically?
That's a possibility. I would say that sometimes they know that they need help, but sometimes they're not able to put it into words perfectly, and it would surprise you from a high level executive, right? But at the end of the day, it's they're humans. They're human beings, and you don't know the circumstances that made that person become the CEO of that organization. You have no idea, right? I mean, you just guess, right? You go to Facebook, you go to LinkedIn, you look at their profiles, right? And you just guess what they went through in their lives, but that has nothing to see. I think that anything holds on paper. Anything. You can justify anything just because of a piece of paper, right? But what is the reality behind that? What is the real concern? What are the emotions? What are the feelings? Right? What is the thought process of a person? You have no idea until you start talking to them. That's why I'm saying they might want something, but they don't really know what they need. I'm going to repeat this. They might want something, but not necessarily know what they need. Right? So that's why, in the beginning, in the initial conversations with our, potential clients, that's what we do. We try to make sure that maybe what they think that they want, you can provide them because you have been able to understand what they need, right? So they have a sense of fulfillment when you provide them with what they want. Does it make sense, Thomas?
Profound.
Yeah, it is profound. Yeah, but it is. Yeah, I mean, we are complex. We are complex people. I mean, individually, we are, we are the sons and daughters of all the circumstances that we have lived in our lives.
Well, the other thing that your answer made me think of is when you get to CEO level, it's perceived by everyone else that that person's super successful and everything they do just kind of works. But in reality, it's a lot more messy than that.
Oh, absolutely, exactly. It's I when I lived in the UK, I learned a term that I have used since, which is orderly disorder. Orderly disorder. Okay, so we would think that CEOs, besides being successful, besides having a nice paycheck, right? Besides all of that, they have a very ordered life. Or maybe they have an orderly disorder life. I would say they don't even get there, to be honest, because most of the time they have had to sacrifice some aspects in their life, some of the roles, in order to be so successful. Okay, so again, we're going back to the same place. It's like when you are a CEO and you go to meet your board, the shareholders, right, the investors, it's like when if you're ever being called, Thomas, to the principal's office, it's kind of the same thing. He's still a human being, or she is still a human being. The CEO is still a human being, and they have to respond to the commitments that they made the previous quarter or the previous fiscal year, right? Whatever the checks and balances are. But again, they are still human beings, and they have had to sacrifice because how many hours, is it 168, right? Hours a week. So we have 168 hours a week. So that's how many hours we have, all of us. It doesn't matter if you are the CEO of General Electric or British Aerospace, or you are a small business owner, or you are an employee. It doesn't matter. We all have the same amount of hours. So what do you do? What do you sacrifice? Are you obliged to sacrifice? Probably you are too. You are. So are you at the right company as a CEO? That's another question that sometimes I help CEOs to answer. Are you at the right? I mean, what is the toll that this role of yours is taking into your life? What is the toll? Are you willing to keep on paying that toll every single morning when you get into your car and you're driving towards your office? Is that still enough? Is it still paying off? Are the dividends, are your personal and family dividends enough? And for instance, a family is a good indicator, right? Family, kids, wife. This is a great indicator of someone's life, of someone's quality of life. Because, I mean, obviously not everybody feels compelled to have a family, but the ones that do, very early on, they realize that they want to really live the lives of their kids. Otherwise, someone else is going to be, raising them, excuse me.
Yeah. Do you find that asking that question, typically, are they in the right role often, or are they often not in the right role as CEO or in the right company even?
Most of the time they're in the right, they are in the right. Well, they think they are because, I mean, they have been reinforcing that thought for how many years? How many years did it take to them to be in that place? So can you imagine how strong those neuronal connections? Let's talk about thoughts, right, and beliefs. Considering the neuroscientists, the people that know much more than me about thoughts and ideas and beliefs, they say that every single idea is a neuronal connection in your brain. The more that connection fires together, it wires together. So imagine someone that has been for their entire lives, firing together those thoughts. I have to do this because I want to reach the summit. I want to reach the summit of my corporate career. I want to do that. I want to do that. So their thoughts are very strong, very strong. So then it's when you ask the right questions is that they start opening themselves and they start valuing and assessing the decisions that they made throughout their lives. And there might be my questions, or there might be maybe some incidences that happen in their kids' lives or in their relatives' lives, or even at their parents' lives. Some people are always very attached to their parents, and sometimes parents obviously they age, they grow older, and sometimes they don't have their kids around or their children around to help them as they age. So yeah, so I think there's always a discovery there.
Well, I think that I heard that regarding changing people's minds, the sort of the emotional feeling that people have around changing those beliefs is because in the brain, it's located near the pain center. So it's almost like if I have to change my mind at this point, it's actually going to be painful for me. That's the link that's somehow there. Although I'm no neuroscientist, so that might be completely wrong.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but obviously, we are still animals. We are sophisticated animals, and our brain is still, the heritage of this animal kingdom that we originated, initially, and we have to. Well, we know that this is, we want to preserve our life, right? That's the main thing. We have this survival instinct, and we still have this survival instinct totally ingrained in our personality, in our character.
So a segue into how did you get into the field of coaching CEOs? How did you start in this?
Yeah, so basically, when I started my career in the 90s, actually it was in the moment in which I moved out of Barcelona and I started my work in the UK, that I started to make a lot of phone calls. So my position was an inside sales position at that time, and it was caring about corporate accounts in many different countries in Europe. But the phone calls I was making were from the UK. So I started to have systematically over a thousand conversations every single week. Okay, so I was having a lot of conversations. We were really a machine. You would say they would be very brief. I mean, not necessarily. I would have like long conversations and very short conversations. But when you start talking to people, and most importantly, listening to people, you realize that we don't have different problems as human beings. We all have a lot of the same problem. And it's fear for one reason, for another. We feel uncomfortable, we feel unease, whatever that is. And that relates to our company, it relates to a business, it relates to our employees, it relates to our finances. But at the end of the day, we all have the same thing, which is we are fearful for something. There's something that we would like to feel more comfortable about, right? And that's so when you do something systematically, and when you do something over and over and over and over again, you start seeing, commonalities. You start saying that, oh my God, maybe there's something here that I'm realizing. I'm realizing that if I listen properly and if I ask questions, I'm realizing that I'm giving these people with the right level of, trust, or with the right level of, not trust, confidence, excuse me. We use the same word in Spanish. So, and that's when I realized, oh my God, I really can do that. And also something is that I was very good in dealing with gatekeepers. So I would reach out to C-level executives with some frequency. So I realized that, again, these people were, exactly the same way that the people at the bottom. You know, maybe they were more scarce in time. I get that, right? Because they have a lot of things to do in a single day. I get that. But at the end of the day, they're human beings. And the good thing about people at that level is that they don't get any we would say BS in the UK, in the US, right? You understand what I mean? So it's good to have a very direct conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't, you don't have to go around the bushes. It's great. I love to be direct. I love to be in a conversation in which, we spend 5 minutes and not 30 minutes, or we spend 10 minutes and not, 1 hour. You know what I mean? I like to have a straightforward conversation. So this is the deal. This is what I would like to do. This is what I would like to accomplish, blah, blah, blah. I like that. Maybe that's the only difference. But to your question again, it's realizing that when you do something consistently, you realize that people really want to be heard. And you are good in listening, and you are good in analyzing what they're saying. That's what got me started.
You made a lot of progress in that, and you thought, I can do this. And then what was the steps after that?
Well, I have to say that I started to do that while I was in corporate America. So that was part of my role. So even if it was not written in my job description, because coach is like a soft skill to be considered in the job description in a corporate environment, right? But in reality, the people I was working with, and I was throughout my corporate career, I was actually coaching a lot of CEOs, both for growing their businesses and for making buying decisions. So I started to do that consistently. So again, it's like my frame of reference was different. So even though I was always developing business, so like selling, right? Developing businesses for different companies and helping companies develop their businesses, I was always myself on that spot of being a coach. It's like I made the decision myself of being a coach, not only being someone that would be there to tell them you have to do this, 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 and this. And if you don't do this, you're going to fail. And then when we review the sales forecast, no, you didn't do this. You have to do this, 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 and this. It's a decision that you make, right? And I think that, very honestly, Thomas, I think that comes from your upbringing. That comes from your heart. That comes from when you have a relationship with someone. Where does your relationship start from? I think that it's a common denominator in your life, that you start every single relationship from the same place. I really felt like that myself. Honestly, I really felt myself being in that place of, I was always coaching, like asking questions, trying to understand, right? Trying to understand. And I think, again, I connect that very much with my heart, with like listening to my heart's voice, regardless of my degrees, my computer engineering degree, my MBA, regardless. It's like we are human beings. And what can I do to help you?
Good answer. I got a list of questions here, and this particular question, there's a context behind it, and that is, I'm sure you've heard the stats before about CEOs working a certain number of minutes per day, the actual productive work that they do. Are you aware of that statistic at all?
No, I'm not.
I think it's, in a working day, in a normal average working day, they get, I'm fudging the numbers a bit, but it's like an hour and 20 minutes of actual solid work or whatever it might be. And the question is, what would you say is the activity a CEO does the most? And that's the context for that question.
I think it's I would say talking to the rest of the organization, mainly the leadership team, to make sure that the organization is aligned. That would be my number one thing.
So it's essentially communication.
Yes.
Okay, that's very interesting, because it just means that the emphasis on that particular skill is very high then, right?
Yes, I think that you have to be a good, again, it's you are the CEO or you are the leader of the organization. Who are you? The CEO or the leader, right? I believe that the real leaders, are the CEOs I work with are the real leaders of the organization.
And what are, would you say, are the biggest misconceptions about CEOs?
Yeah, the biggest misconceptions is what you mentioned before, which is they're so successful, they're so happy, everything is great, everything works out, they have the perfect life. That would definitely be one of them. I actually have a very interesting example to mention, which is a real, this guy was running a multi-thousand employee company in the healthcare sector here in the US. And I will never forget what he was telling me. Actually, we became friends, so I meet with him from time to time, and he always tells me I would sacrifice all my wealth, and so that he made an exit of multi-hundred millions of dollars. He made an exit. So the caliber of his wealth. I would sacrifice all my wealth for having the family that you had.
Wow.
That's a true story. I would sacrifice all my wealth, all of it, for having the beautiful family that you had.
Presumably because in order to become a CEO, you're neglecting the rest of your life, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And
So do you,
interestingly enough, he's a people's man. In this case, he's a man. I mean, he gets along with people a lot, but exactly, he sacrificed that part of his life, and it's never too late, right? It's never too late, but there's things that with age they become more complicated.
so for people who might be watching this that would want to become a CEO, and they're smart enough to be able to know that that's a problem, what would you say to someone who's essentially trying to have both?
Put your priorities right. Put your priorities right. I think that you can achieve both, but you have to put your priorities right since the very beginning, and make the different roles in your life support each other. Sometimes we believe that we can only be one thing or another. How can one thing help me be the other, right? So how can you involve, maybe, I mean, there's CEOs that bring their families to their companies. I mean, I don't mean like employees, but maybe they bring them to just to show them things that can help them. They bring their kids because they want their kids to be inspired. So and some others try to keep both worlds very separated, very different, right? Very, one aside from the other, one apart from the other. But I would say that get your priorities right very early on in your career, and number two, and make sure that you always think of your life as a pyramid, that every single stone supports each other. Okay, it's not like every single stone in that pyramid supports each other, and then when you start growing, I think that one of the things that we unfortunately don't do well in life, and that's due to the education that we receive, is that we don't ask enough. We don't ask enough, and I think that's a common denominator inside in the corporate world too, is that we don't set the right expectations, or we don't ask enough, or we don't ask enough questions to the right people expressing what we can do and what we want to do for that organization. Okay, I've seen people progressing inside their organizations, becoming the CEOs, and those were people that were obviously, they were very passionate, they were very clear, they were very focused, but at the same time, they were asking the questions, and they were asking that they wanted to do some things. We tend to be, in general, asking questions aloud and to be exposed is not properly valued, socially speaking. It's identified as you don't fit in because you ask that uncomfortable question. I think that we all should. If I started my life again, all right, if I started my life again, I would probably ask more questions and continuously ask questions and ask to receive. And there's a universal law here, which is the law of reciprocity. I think that we don't receive enough because we don't ask enough.
I think there's probably also an issue there with, I think that human beings feel like they're more transparent than they are. And I don't know if that's a psychology issue from when you're, when you're brought raised, and you think your parents seem to know a lot, and you think that everyone else seems to know what you want, but in reality, people know very little about what you want, right?
Well, let me tell you a very simple example. You're going with your parents to see some relatives or some friends, and what's the first thing that your parents are going to tell you? Most likely, don't ask for anything unless you're being offered, because it will be considered as rude, right? And I used to think like this before. I mean, I remember my mom telling me, please make sure that you behave, make sure that you don't do this, you don't do that, you don't do that. How many don'ts compared to the do's would your parents tell you when you would visit some relatives? So there's this sense of fitting in that I think is too strong in the world today, and that makes us not ask in order to receive, to be very honest.
So, would you ever coach someone to go from an existing lower job to becoming CEO, or have you ever done that?
That's a great question. I haven't done that. I've seen people around my clients in the organizations I've been working with, but I haven't personally done it. But would I be able and willing to do it? Yes, because I've been able to help people at different levels of the organization, right? So, but going back to the marketing thing, you have to be very focused on what you do, right? So, could I do that? Could I offer someone to do that? Yes. I have not offered it as a service. I have not publicized it. I haven't, throw it to the world out there. But could I do it? Yes, because
So you wouldn't decline it, but you know who your customer is, which is CEOs essentially.
Yes. So I wouldn't decline such a request from someone. If someone asked me to do it, I wouldn't say no. I would say yes, because also I believe that you have to always. I mean, even myself. I mean, I put myself out of my comfort zone every single day because not because I like to feel uncomfortable, but because I just like to test myself. It's like a podcast interview. Actually, you don't know what the host is going to ask you. Even if they provide you with a list of questions, it doesn't matter. Still, there can be a lot of different questions which are going to be asked, and maybe you are not comfortable answering. Honestly, I believe that every single podcast interview I'm giving, it's a growth opportunity for me. Totally.
Well, they can. I mean, questions in general can get you thinking about stuff that you hadn't otherwise thought of before, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I know you mentioned Tony Robbins. Who are your mentors?
Yes, so I haven't really had mentors in my life, like mentors, one-on-one mentors, but I have had like generic mentors as Tony Robbins. I consider him, maybe I don't consider him a mentor, but I consider him someone that for a couple of years he made a huge impact in my life. It coincided with my relocating from actually Latin America to the US. I went to a Unleash Your Power Within event by Tony Robbins, and it was so intense, so intense. And he mentioned several concepts that changed my life forever. So that's one of them. The other one is Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's a neuroscientist. Dr. Joe Dispenza is a public figure as well. He does thousands of people events, and I like a lot because of what I do. I like a lot to study the science behind the behavior of people. I like that a lot. A lot. And then I consider myself very spiritual in the sense that I'm always looking for additional answers to what's going on in the world, what's going on in my life, what's going on in the universe, these kind of things, And when you are trying to find those answers, so there's a whole bunch of people, I have a list of affirmations that I use every single day. I try to sing and I try to dance, those are my mentors because I'm a very high energy guy. I can be very, very quiet, but at the same time, I'm also, I build myself with additional strength every time I sing or every time I dance. I really, those are activities that feel my human and spiritual side a lot.
Well, I like the story about the UPW event. I haven't been to one personally, so it's interesting that you say that. It makes me want
Yeah,
to go even more.
very intense, very, very intense.
Can you tell me about when you met Les Brown? Because I'm a fan.
Yes, of course. I sit on the board of an organization called Evolutionary Business Council, and I we are basically a group of very highly influential people in the world. We are like almost 600 million people altogether of outreach. And we are only 320 people in that organization, but that's the combined outreach that we have. And we very often invite people like Les Brown, and he's actually a member of the organization. Okay, so we invited him, and we were together in Costa Rica, and we had a blast. We were like 4 or 5 days together. It was a very small event, and yeah, we became very close. I mean, we have now common friends, and there's people that in his team, and he is actually I have interviewed him for my activities. I remember one time I did a telethon, like a 22 hour straight of live interviews on Facebook, and one of my interviewees was actually Les Brown. And since that was 4 years ago. That was 4 years ago. You've probably seen the picture online, my picture with him, right? And we've been in contact. I met his son then also as well. I met his daughter. Yeah, he's an extraordinary human being with a great team.
I've quoted Les Brown many times, so
yeah,
I'm a big fan as well.
Yeah,
but yeah, great story. I've been doing our podcast. I did a little bit of research, and can you tell me about your goal to help 810,000 kids to become entrepreneurs?
Yes. So when I started, Wisdom for Kids, basically I started assessing what's the need in Latin America, and the need is very clear. There were 81 million kids in Latin America in 2012, according to UNICEF figures. So I had when I was living in Latin America, I lived in Latin America for 10 years. When I was living in Latin America, I was seeing the poverty all over the place. So when I left corporate America, I decided to start with a couple of friends. I started Wisdom for Kids, which is the foundation that I'm the president of, and I co-founded. And what we do is we help underprivileged kids in Latin America become entrepreneurs using the local resources. So basically, I saw this huge opportunity of helping kids with my entrepreneurship skills and my friends' entrepreneurial skills, and also to connect those worlds, the worlds of the very highly influential people in Latin America I had met when I was coaching, because I coached a lot of people in Latin America, a lot. I lived there for 10 years. And to bring this world down to or in connection with the most underprivileged people in the world, which are the kids, right? And then, everything started. So we have held more, we had to stop activities last year, but we have held more than 1,000 families with their kids in different areas, mainly in Mexico, because it's the closest place here to the US. And yeah, it's extremely, it's one of these places in which I recharge my batteries. I get totally knackered because I really work really hard, and I do a lot when I go myself and deliver the training, the workshops, the inspiration that we give those kids. I really empty myself of physical energy, but from a human spiritual energy, I fill up totally by doing that and going to very underprivileged areas and indigenous communities, these kind of things.
That's amazing. Congratulations doing
Absolutely.
that.
Thank you.
So, one thing I have noticed from your LinkedIn activity is that philanthropy very important to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much. Because I have been volunteer for local hospices here. I always think that we can do so much more with our time. It's like getting your priorities right. I really think that, as opposed to be And I do that a lot because of my business, but as opposed to be on social media or on TV, you can do so much more to make this world a better place, this world a better place. So yeah, I have helped a lot of people. I have helped a lot of companies. I've been pro bono with a lot of organizations. I've sat on the board of organizations for free. Yeah, I mean, I think that the world, there's a lot of differences. There's a lot of, inequities. Let's put it this way. And some of us, and you are definitely one of them with your podcast, we want to help. We want to be inspiring the world every single day. So.
Well, thank you very much for all the value you've given on the interview. And can you
Absolutely.
tell the audience where the best place for people to find you is?
Absolutely. Yes. As you mentioned before, my brand is the CEO Confidant, And my name is Angel Ribo. So the easiest way is to go to LinkedIn because I'm very active. I answer all the messages there. And then my email is very simple. It's Angel, ANGEL, at Angel Ribo. Ribo spell as RIB as in boy O, Angel at angelribo.com. That's my email address. That's the easiest way to reach out to me. And Thomas, I wanted to say thank you very much for you allowing me to be here to speak to your audience and for having such a great conversation with you today.
It's absolutely my pleasure. And I will speak to you soon, all right?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.